How many of you are familiar with this story in some capacity? Is this familiar narrative to you? We have been going through the Gospel of Luke this fall, and we got up to chapter 8. But we intentionally saved chapters 1 and 2 for Advent, because I thought there's no sense in preaching chapters 1 and 2 in September and then try and figure out something else to do during Advent. They're perfect for Advent, let's just save them. So it's been a little bit of an experiment. So last week we got up to chapter 8 in Luke, and now we're coming back to chapter 1. One of the reasons I've been so excited about this experiment that we're doing is because it has given us an opportunity to learn about Luke's storytelling. And we've been using the analogy of a quilter, taking pieces of fabric and stitching them together. Sometimes we talk about cross stitch, or we've used different analogies, but I really like this idea of the quilter. Especially in Advent, it seems really appropriate to talk about the Christmas quilts and all that sort of thing. Luke pieces together this story because there's something he wants us to see. And so there's just a couple threads I'd like to tease out this week that are very encouraging to me. So this word that gets translated into English, virgin, is a very old word, and the English word that we associate with virgin has come to take on very different meaning over the last couple centuries. But in the original language, it's just a simple word that means a young woman, Alma. It's a very simple word, not with all of the packaging and the baggage that gets layered onto it in recent centuries. But there's a passage here where the pairing is of a very young woman and a very old woman who have both miraculously conceived of child. And Luke pairs them back to back as a storytelling method to say this thing, and I hope you heard it this morning, for nothing is impossible with God. That's the gospel this morning. The gospel is nothing is impossible with God. So I want to say to you, don't get distracted by details and physics and argumentation, and don't get caught up in controversy. Hear the word of the Lord. For the young and for the old, nothing is impossible with God. That's good news, right? Because, and here's the second thing I want to highlight. The entire gospel story has woven through it, the thing that stitches it all together, is this underlying assumption that sometimes you and I miss when we get too comfortable with the story. And what Luke wants us to know is this really simple yet controversial idea that the way the world is not the way it has to be. Now that will preach in 2019. That is as revolutionary as it was in year 3. In 2019, I feel like I need to say almost every week, the way the world isn't the way it needs to be. Does anyone feel like that's good news? That's good news. Because I don't know if you like the way things are going, or if you think, things are just fine, I don't see what everyone's so upset about, or whatever it is. Listen, the way the world is not the way it needs to be. And then this passage ends with Mary saying what I think is probably the most profound thing in the entire Bible. I think in the mouth of Mary, in her voice, Luke puts this word, the Annunciation. What Mary says is the most amazing declaration or prayer, you might call it, in the entire Bible. And it's so simple we miss it sometimes. She simply says, "May it be unto me as you have said." She heard the word of the Lord, and she agreed with it. By agreeing with what God had for her, she opened up miraculous and amazing possibilities by faith. So that part that John read is probably the famous part, and most of you could probably, if you were on a game show and there were $10,000 on the line, you could have given a rough configuration of that story and gotten most of the details right. Right? If money was on the line, you could have pieced that one together. But there's another section that comes right after that that doesn't get as much attention, and I want to share that with you this morning. So we continue on where Mary sets out to go and meet with Elizabeth, and we're going to pick it up actually in verse 43. So Elizabeth is blessing her, and she says, "And this is why it has happened to me, that the mother of my Lord comes to me. For as soon as I heard the sound of your greeting, the child in my womb leapt for joy. And blessed is she who believed that there would be a fulfillment of what was spoken to her by the Lord." And then Mary says the wildest thing in the entire New Testament. You ready? "My soul magnifies the Lord, and my spirit rejoices in God my Savior. For he has looked with favor on the lowliness of his servant. Surely from now on all generations will call me blessed, for the Mighty One has done a great thing for me, and holy is his name. His mercy is for those who fear him, and from generation to generation. He has shown strength with his arm. He has scattered the proud in their thoughts, who have thoughts in their hearts. He has brought down the powerful from their thrones and lifted up the lowly. He has filled the hungry with good things and sent the rich away empty. He has helped his servant Israel in remembrance of his mercy, according to the promise he has made to our ancestors, to Abraham and to his descendants forever." I don't know what kind of songs your mama sang to you when you were young, but you know the songs our moms sing to us shape us. My mom was a flower child. She was a product of the Woodstock generation. And so I grew up with a steady diet of Dylan and Woody Guthrie, and I learned to mistrust institutions and authority early on. My mom was very suspicious of those in power, aka the man, and she passed that on to her children. Mary would have sang this song over a young Jesus, and he would have been formed by it. Where lofty things are brought down and lowly things are raised up. Where the hungry are fed with goodness and those who are too full are sent away. Jesus picked that up from Mary. He was shaped by the songs of his mama. She had a vision of a world that did not need to be the way it was. And she, by faith, was under the impression that God was going to change things. That those who were too high would be brought low. Those who were too low would be lifted up. That those who felt very far away would be brought near. And those who assumed they were at the center would be pushed to the margin. Mary had a vision of the world, and she passed it on to her son. The songs we sing shape us. And Mary's Magnificat, sometimes it gets called, I hope if you hear it this Christmas, I hope you stop and realize that Jesus' mama sang him a song of revolution. Mary taught Jesus the way things are isn't the way they need to be. Son, God is changing things. And it all begins with a very simple posture of prayer. May it be unto me as you have said. So I hope that this Advent season, you might incorporate that in your morning routine, or maybe in your bedtime prayers, and simply open yourself to the possibility that the way things are isn't the way that they need to stay, and that you're willing to be a part of the revolution of love, and it just begins with a simple prayer. May it be unto me as you have said, and then we begin to change the world.